Betsy will be sharing with us by Zoom in November, and she has some ideas on capturing motion. She was with us last spring, and everybody just loved her presentation. So she's got something new going on. So we're going to have her come and share with us. And then for December, I have Mike O'Connor. He is what you call a bucket list adventurer, what everyone thinks or dreams about being. But he said after many years as a consulting engineer and entrepreneur, he's pursuing all the things he didn't have time for before. Adventure travel photography is one passion that keeps me going. So he goes around the world. One of the things he does is he volunteers for the world famous Calgary Stampede, which sounds pretty exciting.
We'll need it. Yeah. So they can't hear her. Okay. So don't worry about it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So he's coming in November, or I'm sorry, December. And then tonight we're really excited to have a new resident of Grand Rapids. However, he still travels a lot. This is Steve Jessmore. We became acquainted through emails back and forth. One of the people here saw his winning image in Audubon Photography. And so we searched him out, and he graciously has given us tonight, and we're going to see what his historical adventure has been through his life with photography and all of his other things he's been up to. He's been working for different schools and different photojournalism projects. And so, yeah, he's going to share with us tonight. Anyway, welcome, Steve. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you.
Before we get started, Steve. All right. So, do I put this back over here then?
Do we share screen? All right. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay with this on. So I'm definitely not used to it even after a year and a half.
Are you ready to share your screen?
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead and just share your desktop. All right.
Are we up there?
Should be good.
All right. Where do I start? I was born in Saginaw, Michigan. My dad had a photo store. I have been around photography my whole life. Not so much taking photos early on, but definitely around equipment. And my father was a 16mm photographer, film, had a huge camera store, a Kodak Stockhouse dealership. So I kind of just grew up there and cut my teeth there, cleaning cameras and working weekends and just being around cameras. I have made my entire living, my whole life, through photography. I went to Central Michigan University in 1981. I graduated. I got out in 3.5 years, went in pre-med, came out in journalism, and came out in the middle of a recession. Jumping back before that in high school, wanted to go see concerts. My parents basically said, well, they're too expensive. You know, I think I had a ticket for Queen and Bob Seger for $6, you know, in the second row back then. And I said, well, if I can figure out a way to go to concerts and not have it cost me any money, can I go? And they said, sure. So I went down to the Saginaw News as a 16-year-old and walked in with some of my concert pictures and showed it to them and told them I could do the job, and gave them the number to my school office and to my dad's store. We had no cell phones, obviously. You guys all know that. You know, no cell phones, no anything to be connected. And but the school office and my parents' numbers, and by God, one day they called me in the middle of school and had me go shoot a band called Parliament that night. Shot over 100 concerts before I left high school for the Saginaw News, got paid for every one of them, and got a second row seat for every one of them, and it was a wonderful experience. All my concert pictures, you're not going to see any, all burned up, by the way. I lost everything in house fire in 1987. So all my old photography is gone. But I was a photojournalist, came out of school as a journalism major, loved people. 99% of everything I shot until this past year had people in it. You know, I mean, I just never had time to do landscapes or things I wanted, wildlife. I went to Yellowstone a few times. You know, I traveled around. I'm just going to start breezing through these. This is some of my journalism work. But I love telling stories. I love photographing people. I love making connections with people. I think the best thing I like about photography, about journalism, was the hunt. I really love to like stalk, like you do with wildlife. I love to be able to find a composition, wait for somebody to cross it, and you know, just for the time of day to be right and the activity to be right to make what I thought was a neat picture. But I enjoyed, you know, I didn't enjoy spot news so much, but you know, that was something we had to shoot. You know, we did all different, you know, everything that you would see in your daily newspaper. I used to read a daily newspaper when I was, you know, in high school. It just seemed like a wonderful place to work. My first job, I finally got hired in about 1984 at the Saginaw News. Saginaw was a great town. It was just like Flint, but smaller. And Flint was, I ended up in Flint in '99. That was like Detroit, but smaller, and it was manageable. One of the things I liked was you just never knew what you were going to photograph day in and day out. And so, you know, I could be in the heart of the ghetto one minute, and I could be in a farm field, you know, then the next minute I could be at a fire, you know, literally the next minute. It was just a really interesting way to make a living. And, you know, you had to be creative. You had to do your research just like you do with any kind of photography, travel photography, whatever kind of photography. You have to know where you're going, what you kind of want to photograph, the time of day that's best to be there. And we had to do that in real time. You know, like this was the first day of school. We'll go out and make a first day of school picture. And that was a challenge. And we were an afternoon paper, so I had to have that first day of school picture in someone's hands by like usually 9:30 in the morning. And they had a hole in the paper, you know, ready for it. So there was no failing. And I really liked that pressure, you know, as I worked, you know, that you had to bring something back. And that's still how I treat, you know, everything I ever do. You had to find new ways of telling stories. You had to gain access. You had to make friends with police officers. You had to just basically be part of the community. And all my life, I stayed as a community photographer. I think if you asked any photojournalist what they would know about me, it would be that I would be a community journalist. I never went to that, by the way, was a murder scene. They were looking for evidence. Same thing, on deadline in the morning. But, you know, to be able to talk your way in within that evidence, sort of that, you know, police line. This was the world, he was the pipe smoking champion. I don't know how many times, but it was Paul's Pipe Shop in Flint, Michigan. And, you know, again, I love to get that human element into photos, and I still do. It's, to me, it shows scale. This was, if you see the big shipping container, you know, the domes along the rivers, this particularly Saginaw, they load fertilizer in there, and, you know, you had to talk your way in. Again, you know, this was the first day they were using it. Talk your way in to say, hey, you know, it'd be a really great picture if I could go in there. Well, let me ask. And in the meantime, you sneak in and you get the picture, and then they're all standing there. Well, what's he doing? You know, and that's all the guys waiting to give me permission. But, you know, it was a fun job to be creative. I took a lot of art in high school. I never really took art in college. But I hope my, you know, photography has a design to it. I really pay attention to composition and light. And I love wide angle lenses. I love extreme telephoto lenses. I love the extremes, you know, to try to make pictures not gimmicky, but to tell stories. You know, spot news just there. Kid got too close to the fire. You know, another fire. You know, you're trying to make something out of. You get to the fire and it's out. What do? You know, you wait and you look and you try to be creative. And so this is some of the, you know, spot news and some of the journalism I've done through the years. This was a scene in Flint where I was actually in court at a murder trial. I got a pager message that I had to go to a school on the north end, and a first grader had shot another first grader. And I was the first person on the scene, and it was chaos. And I waited, shot pictures, waited, but about an hour later, car screeched to a halt down the road. I shot this with a 600mm lens. Lady got out of the car. I have never heard a scream like I heard at that moment. They put her back in the car and took her off. And that was the mother of the boy that shot the little girl. And, you know, again, I don't like preying on things. We're there to tell stories, you know, and I struck up actually a relationship with her, and we photographed her many times after that in her own house. And, you know, she appreciated the fact why we were there and was just as disturbed as we all were. But, you know, it was, you know, a simple fire department calls, and people don't have, you know, the money to buy another car, but their car's gone and their lifeline's gone. And trying to just tell these stories. This was backstage at a fashion show before the women went on stage. One of my favorites. Kids will be kids, you know. Kids, I still remember the woman next to me was a little boy's mother, and as soon as he did that, she had her camera and she just yelled, "No!" But this was after school, you know, trying to talk his way out of driving too fast on the way home and flipped his car. This was heartbreaking. A little girl got kidnapped in Flint and ended up, you know, being killed. And that's her mother at a tree planting, you know, in memory of Sierra. Again, making something out of nothing, you know. I mean, this is the day before the festival. What do you do the day before the festival? You have to go and try to be creative. One of the most fun projects I've worked on through the years was the development of the casino in the Chippewa Reservation in Mount Pleasant. I was a student there. I shot pictures in the 80s. This was Chief Little Elk. He spoke Chippewa still. This was shot in the early 80s. And he would ride with me in my car, and we'd go to the old cemeteries. And I photographed him in his bedroom making baskets. You know, just I've been fortunate to strike up, you know, these relationships with people by putting in the time and having them trust me and knowing that I'm not going to, you know, just, I'm not going to do them wrong. You know, I'm going to tell their story the way it needs to be told. Still one of my favorite pictures. This was a fire in Myrtle Beach that I don't know how many homes were, 60, 70 homes were burned. You know, wildfire jumped the highway and took out the homes. But that's actually a reflection of the, you know, hazy sun in the water of one of the ponds shot from an airplane. My professional career as a photojournalist, I went from Saginaw, where I worked 15 years. I went to Flint, where I worked another 10. I was chief photographer at both papers. And then 2008, when we had the crash, sort of the internet came and the classifieds and Craigslist and all of that, the newspapers sort of took a dive. And Flint, they called me in and told me they were going to reduce my staff from 10 people to me. And I was going to be the only one left, and maybe a couple of interns. And at that point, I took a job the next day in Myrtle Beach and ended up working in Myrtle Beach for about 6 years, where I started with 6 photographers. And every 3 months at a maximum, they would lay off. They'd have a layoff, basically, meeting in the newsroom. And by the time I left 6 years later, we only had 2 photographers plus me. So I think I survived because I was a content producing editor. I was a photographer, but I still did all the editing and all the layout and all of those things too. So I was sort of valuable to them in that standpoint where I did too many things for them to let me go. But so I did photojournalism, but I did a grant in Flint. Everybody knows what Google Street View is, right? I had that idea before Google Street View, and I actually got a grant from the Mott Foundation to produce on Flint's 150th anniversary. I walked 21 miles of streets and did this 21 miles of streets. I took a picture every five steps, pieced them together in a somewhat artistic way, I hope, where the building edges, I'm not trying to be literal with it, but I did it as a representation. I was inspired by another collection I saw somebody else did with just single pictures of houses earlier, like 50 years earlier. So I was able to get this, and we had a grant. I had a web guy that was gonna put it online, and we were gonna, we had a whole bunch of ideas, and then Google Street View came out while we were doing this. So, but it was still a really great project for Flint. These were shot with a 5D Mark IV, a tilt shift lens. The pictures at that time, the computers were really slow, so 2005, but each one ended up being something like a terabyte, the piece together. I had to buy so much RAM for my old computer, and it was really expensive back then, like $1,000 for, I don't remember what, a little chip, I think. And, but it made a really interesting project for the people at Flint, at least, at that point. So that was one of my most fun things I did on the side of this. I was a photojournalist also at the same time. One of my other favorite things to do was sports. Through the years, I got to do a lot of different things. And again, I was a community journalist, really. I did writing, and I did not much story-wise, but we wrote our captions, and we did develop ideas and research ideas. But I did everything from youth sports to pro sports, and I covered the Buick Open every year for about 15 years. I was a lead photographer a lot of those years. It was a blast. You'd be out there from Sunday to Sunday, basically all day long, and just, trying to gain access to like Tiger. It was during Tiger Mania, in the early 2000s where he won in Flint, and he was winning everywhere, and the crowds were just incredible. But Cecil Fielder from the Tigers, I don't know if you guys remember him. He was RBI king 3 years in a row, and I got a 5-minute session with Cecil to shoot that picture at spring training. Myrtle Beach, hurricanes, before the hurricanes, everybody went out and surfed. I was at the '84 World Series. That was one of the first things I ever did, like pro wise. And I was lucky enough to be on the field all 3 of the Detroit, wins at home, and saw the, celebration and everything. That was Gibson's home run. From the other side, that Mary Schroeder shot it. But I have to tell you guys, Kirk Gibson's mom told me she liked mine better than his because he didn't look like such an animal. So that's what she told me. She had it hanging on her fireplace. So, but I was only 24, maybe there, 23, 24 when I shot that. So another person I had to convince to let me take pictures of was Chris Bird, who ended up becoming heavyweight champion of the world. He was a fighter in Flint. His dad was the Olympic coach in, I don't remember where, but it was in Europe. Chris fought. The Flint Journal didn't go cover him, and he was our hometown boy, and I wasn't in Flint at that point. So when I wanted to do a story on him, I met him at a restaurant, and we sat and talked. He said, I really am kind of upset with you. I don't want you to do this story. You guys did me wrong. You didn't even follow us at the Olympics. Why should I let you do it now? And we talked, and he gave me full access, and I gained his trust. But I went out to New Jersey when he fought Holyfield, and did some other fights in between. And this was the end with Don King, and that was really an interesting kind of experience. but just, you know, it was really fun to me to make something out of, again, kind of nothing, to be creative, you know, when you're in the inner circles, you know, you're in there, you're not just looking for snapshots, you're trying to see the little details and, you know, just see what you guys can't see at home, you know, I mean, on TV, if you're watching, or if you're on the sidelines even, you know, trying to see through the crowds. That little spot in between the two benches at the Red Wings games, you know, I got to sit there a couple times. It was such a blast, you know, just to be there, and you've got plexiglass in between you and them, but you're, yeah, like I'm probably 12 inches from Lidstrom, you know. So I'm a fan, but you can't get geeked up so much when you're covering it. But, you know, it's really an exciting thing personally to be there. This was the Crim race in Flint. We covered it every year. It was a 10-mile road race. We had Kenyans that usually won every year. It was a world-class race, but this was the starting line at the national anthem. Phil Mickelson at the Buick Open. Ben Wallace. That was Barry Sanders. Back in the manual focus days of the 300 millimeter lenses, and it was like photographing. He was just back and forth and back and forth. But so it was really an interesting time, and I got to cover also the closing at Tiger Stadium. You know, I can remember going there as a kid with my dad, and so a lot of those memories came through to me. But, you know, I was able to spend the last 7 games at Tiger Stadium, and I shot this from a helicopter on one of the last games, right after sunset, really, where they just hit the buildings, but not the city. These are some of the images I shot from that picture story that we ran. This picture was probably, I don't know, 200 exposures. Yeah, I underexposed, just sat there and click, underexposed. And that's where anything that stayed put, the exposure build up on that. You can see the little jagged whatever in certain places. But then I waited till like Dad and his little kid came through for the last exposure, which I increased the exposure on and flashed to get that in. But it probably took me, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes to shoot just the one frame by, you know, again, doing so many exposures on one frame. And I didn't say this before, you guys, most of you probably realize it, but I started out in photography in black and white film, like most of us probably did. You know, black and white film professionally. We've rarely shot color film when I first started. 35 millimeter, the guys I worked with, though, shot 4x5 before me. You know, I worked with a staff of guys when I was in my 20s that were all in their 60s, basically. My boss was actually at the Bikini Atoll, and he was at Pearl Harbor when it was bombed and when they did the atomic test. So he had, you know, some of the pictures you see of the Bikini Atoll testing he shot. So I had, you know, like all this great, you know, kind of inspiration. But went from, you know, basically film, and quite honestly, this was all on film right here. So this was on color negative film, but the same thing here, I shot about, I don't know how many exposures, but, you know, the only thing that stayed, my idea was, we did it for a feature page, and I was going to do a project on Tiger Stadium, you know, being still and stable, but everything else being kind of ghost-like. That was my goal, because pretty soon that was all just memories. And so I was trying to be creative, you know, in a journalistic way. It worked out, you know, it really worked out well for the paper, but trying to show some of the, you know, the things that were wrong with Tiger Stadium, why Comerica Park was going to go. You can't see the batter from here, but he's there, you know, but that was, if I had seats like that, I don't know if anybody else had seats like that before. 7th inning stretch on the last game at Tiger Stadium. This was the last pitch at Tiger Stadium. All the flashes going off. I got a lag here. Here's the last meeting at Whittaker and Trammell at second base. They took home plate out and took it to Comerica, and then this was just a fan that didn't want to leave. They had to actually, finally get them to go. But so for journalism, this is the last thing I want to show. This was perhaps like the favorite thing I've ever done in my life. But I actually wrote, designed, everything, interviewed, found the subjects. They gave me the full page of the paper, A5 in the Flint Journal every Sunday. So that was pretty prime space. And I did what they call a photo column, where I talked to people that all had kind of the same idea. The idea stemmed from during my interview when I wanted to leave Saginaw. Flint said they'd make a job for me, but I had to come down for an interview. Went in for an interview. The editor made small talk, sat down at the table, looked me in the eye and said, "Why the hell would you ever come to Flint?" I'm like, "What?" Like, "Why the hell would you come to this godforsaken place?" I'm like, well, you want me to be a photographer, chief photographer, I'll get to take pictures. And I had like literally at that moment said, you might think it's bad. And yeah, there's a lot of bad here, but I said, I bet there's 93% good people instead of 94. It's all how you look at it and the stories you find and how you approach the stories. And I said, I really bet there's a lot of good here. Not that you ignore the bad, but you don't ignore the good either. So this was my attempt to not ignore the good. And I found people that had a sense of community, that I used their words, and I did a little bio, and I always had a point of action every week, where if you wanted to do something cool like they were doing, all you had to do was call that number or contact that person or whatever. And it made it really easy for you. But I did 175 of these columns. This was a deaf pastor. They have a large deaf community in Flint. And I saw that God go across his forehead one time while I was shooting pictures. I said, "Oh my gosh." And I sat there, I can't tell you how long this was during a sermon, until that went across his forehead again and lucked out. But Veterans Day, someone that would decorate. This was a woman used to be the executive secretary for DeSoto Motors. And she would give back. She was in her 80s. She would give back in elementary school, like, I don't know, 40 some hours a week, still in her 80s, every week to help the teachers out. And this man was the best. Clifford Smith, he would walk up and down Saginaw Street every morning in Flint with an umbrella and do like a double pump every time somebody honked at him. And everybody thought he was just crazy. And he said, "Nope, he said, some people ask me how I can be so happy every day." Basically, he was talking about, they say you have a calling in life. I never knew what mine was. People will stop and say that I've made their day. I just praise and thank the Lord. That to me was what I really liked about journalism, to be able to tell stories like that. So I told you guys already, I left. This was another man that cleaned up a lot, just where his brother-in-law was in the hospital. He went out and I found him picking up the lot. He just said, "That's what you do for people you care about, and for a city you care about." So from journalism, I did that from I started, like I told you guys, in high school in the 70s. And I stayed in journalism until 2013 and working for newspapers. Flint Journal and the Myrtle Beach Sun News were the last two. But I was from CMU. I went to school at CMU, and they kind of lured me back to come into higher education. And so I became a college photographer at that point. And it wasn't journalism. Journalism, we didn't control, you didn't change anything. You didn't alter anything. I didn't tell anybody to do anything. I would never ask somebody to do something again. I would never ask them to go stand over there or anything like that. It was what it was. If it was a posed portrait, you knew it was a posed portrait. And yes, I did pose that. But anything in general was just, by spending time, getting to know people, having them open up, access to us. And I hope I'm not going to go really long. If I am, you guys tell me, but I'm going to try to sail through this one. this is what I do now. This is what pays my bills. I'm a college photographer. And I try to approach, I think why it works for me is I try to approach college photography like I do journalism. I try to capture what's really real about these institutions. You know, I'm not asking people to be happy learning or at times now I can pose things. You know, I can ask somebody to do things. I can bring people into a situation. But I think you guys are all smart enough. Most of the time, you know, pictures don't come off as real when they're not real. So I like to still do them real, and I still like to spend that time with, you know, or if they give me 20 minutes in a classroom or whatever, I'm really doing real pictures and trying to be creative. Like this was a dead day at CMU in the middle of the summer, and what do? Well, you haul 3 lights out and photograph the seal, you know, and just try to figure out some kind of cool image that you photograph this thing all the time, every day. Basically, it's, you know, there. It's what people recognize. So you got to try to do it differently. That's what I try to do every time I'm out, is try to do it a little bit different than I did, you know, the time before. And, you know, that picture, my boss hated it, that picture of the seal. She just did not like it at all. And then every single other person loved it. And I just went back to a alumni meeting. I shot that picture probably in 2014. I went to an alumni meeting last Friday there to shoot headshots. That was what they used for the cover of the magazine still, or the cover of the program still to this day, almost 10 years later. But you know, the same thing, I waited here, I saw the beautiful trees and the framing. I just waited for somebody to enter my picture. I didn't, you know, I had 3 people in an hour and a half, I think. I could have said, hey, you know, can you walk by there for me, please? That's what my bosses wanted me to do. I never liked doing that. I still don't like doing that. You know, I like watching for light, trying to make, you know, new buildings, showing how they're new and telling stories. You know, finding the architectural, you know, gems, you know, just these little cool viewpoints. You know, students in the morning, you know, fall morning, you know, the elements of the light, and just, you know, using that arsenal we have of lenses and, you know, focal lengths in our bags. And but, you know, again, this is like a community for me. I'm there every day. I was there every day. You know, this was a living roof they had to, you know, try to be sustainable, where it would catch the rainwater and not roll off. Different times of day, different times of year, but just always trying to do something a little bit different and challenge myself, you know, every day. As I walked around campus, I would take different routes. I would take, if I had a shoot, you know, that was in the biology building, well, I would walk, you know, one way on the way there and one way on the way back. That wasn't the same. It would never be the quickest way most of the time. But, you know, I was trying to find just how things, and, you know, how light was playing on buildings and what changes might be happening. And you got to know when, you know, the certain trees changed, and when classes let out and when classes started, and which days, you know, were an hour and a half classes and which days. You know, you could shoot the beginning of an hour and a half class, go back and edit, and come back for the end of the hour, you know, when they all left. And otherwise it was pretty dead. So, you know, again, just trying to tell stories in my community and get different vantage points, make different friends, you know, to get me into different classrooms and unlock different doors and get to different roofs and, you know, I think I carried a 14-foot ladder out here and stood on the top of it basically to get this picture, because the trees were so close to the building. There was no other way to do it. This was pre-drone too, for the most part. But roofs, that's from the top of Warner Tower, you know. Again, just trying to show what the university is about. I was the only staff photographer for the university, 20-some thousand people, students plus staff and faculty, and had somebody that would help me out and do some headshots. But for the most part, what I did was just went around and decided what stories needed to be told and how to, again, tell those, let the people, show the diversity and show the fun that, kids were actually having there, and the seriousness too, not just fun. I know my wife gets upset when she sees the ads with universities that cost, $30,000 a year looking like they're too much fun. And it's like, yeah, I get that. But, when the fun is put in context with the learning, or the joy, like the first white coat ceremony for the med school. They had a leadership safari that kids would come and learn about the school before it started. They had different celebrations, different days, You get the faculty, the staff, the police interacting with students, the labs, this was an alternative breakdown in Asheville, North Carolina. We went 2,000 and some miles, 5 different cities, shot 5 different alternative breaks in 6 days, and ended up like shooting, driving. But the med school was fun. I still do a lot for the med school. Move-in day, international students. One of the things I like is just to visualize like this, instead of being in there just to shoot his picture. I really like this a lot better backed off and showing some motion in the hallway, but you still know what's kind of going on. There's an advisor with 2 students, and see the beautiful woodwork. I tried to, this was, one of the most boring days of all time, just the day that the scientific papers, you go stand there and talk to people about them. But find a high angle, find a low angle. It still works so much for a lot of the work I do. Special Olympics was at Michigan, or at CMU. This was the fashion merchandising class doing showcases or windows downtown. A clean room, computer, ERP, business type competition. But, I love to build those relationships and to build them really quick. Like to get people, to get people to let me get a foot in front of their face with a wide angle lens, like within a couple of minutes after you meet them, and not have them freak out. That to me was always, a challenge to not be the distraction and do that. And so I've always enjoyed it. And I never would have left CMU, quite honestly. But I met this lady, and she was wonderful, and she lived in Grand Rapids, and she had 3 girls that lived in Grand Rapids, and they were all married, and Grand Valley girls and Grand Valley husbands, and now they got Grand Valley grandbabies. And so it's kind of like, well, do I commute and go back and forth to CMU, or, we talked about it. And I stayed, I was there from 2013 through 2018. 2016, I was going to leave, and we were talking about getting married. And CMU offered me a book, and they said, you can do whatever you want to do. 125 photos, hardcover, limited edition for the foundation, and it's all pictures, like no stories, and you have total control. And so Brenda and I talked, and I said, God, when am I ever going to get a chance like that again? And so a lot of these pictures are, again, trying to highlight what's cool about a university and tell the story, find the moments like this. I couldn't have set that moment up, but an English professor walking across with a book bigger than I've ever read in my life, and just walking, spontaneously. So it was fun. I stayed an extra couple of years and did the book. And this was a dance art around the university. Every year the dance department would go out and do these like installations around campus and just dance. And I would follow them around and try to catch them doing what they were doing. And this is one of my favorite pictures I've ever shot, I think. But, again, to show the connection. I did a lot with the Native Americans. I told you guys that already. Going to kind of wheel through here because I think I'm getting too long, and what we really want to see probably is the rest of it. But I would spend a lot of time with Chippewas. Every year we had a powwow on the university, and it was the same thing. You know, you had to be respectful, but you had to build these relationships to get in quick with them, really, really quick to get intimate pictures, you know, and you had to be very respectful. So, I mean, it was, again, something I really enjoyed. This was a spontaneous portrait, you know, just available light. Another one of my like favorites. I would go to the game, but I would never shoot the game. I would shoot everything but the game. So I would shoot everything that you see in pamphlets and brochures and, you know, websites and, again, like all those kids, and nobody's looking at me, and I'm standing on the top of that bench, and I waved them all off and said, I am not even here. Like, if you want me to take your picture, do your thing. And they all did it. And, you know, it's just the sort of thing you just, at some point, you know, I mean, I guess it just comes, however I'm doing it, I'm quite honestly not sure sometimes. But they just, if you let them be themselves, I think, you know, and not asking, I'm not shooting pose pictures all the time. People don't expect you to shoot pose pictures all the time if you're not doing it. I never, for the most part, did it when somebody would ask me to. And so, you know, this is what we wanted for our publications, and the publications became alive. It was much more like journalism than the photographer before me was incredible. And but he was a Brooks Institute photographer, and they were much more structured and controlling, you know, than my journalism background made me. And so I'm running out, you know, like you see these pictures and you just have to be like in a stealth mode and run out on the floor with a camera on the ground with a 20mm lens. And, you know, this lasts for, you know what, 15 seconds. I don't know. They spin in a circle. And, you know, it's just something I think with experience that you have to visualize, just like you do with any kind of spontaneous photography, visualize. And they always say, like, be a fly on the wall. I say, like, be a spider in a web. You know, a spider goes out, grabs what it wants and gets back again. That's me when I work. It's just like you go out, get what you need, get back. Don't hang out there till you know, get out there and get back before you're seen even, you know, most of the time. So, but again, different angles, and it was just always it's just a blast for me to be able to do this still at 61, you know, whenever I get a chance to do this. I did Elma College's homecoming a couple of weeks ago, you know, and it's fun to go someplace different too. I got so used to CMU, or I'll do a lot of Michigan State work and Grand Rapids Community College work. You know, this was during a band rehearsal, but you know, I didn't know if I was going to get stomped or not. Actually, you kind of don't know what hash mark they're going to hit when you get out there. And but commencement was what it was all about. And so there were always great moments, and that was something that I look forward to shooting too. All right, so deep breath. Then came COVID. And I imagine it changed my life like it changed everybody's life here. Working, you know, shooting colleges, and nobody knew what was happening. You know, none of us knew if it was going to last a week, a month, a day. Who knew? You know, I just remember we went to Washington, D.C. the weekend of March 4th. Started to hear a lot more, you know, reports, the airport, you know, 2 cases at the airport in Washington. It's like, oh God, you know, we're going to be stuck here, and this and that. And went in the Holocaust Museum, and I still remember it was just shoulder to shoulder, and with all this COVID stuff, and, you know, you still don't really know what's coming. But that week I had a shoot, and it was Thursday, I think it was March 8th, if I remember right. My phone literally ran off the hook. All my work for 2020 got canceled, like on one day. everything booked out. I booked, you know, way out with all these events. They're like, well, we're just going to have to cancel. We don't know how long this is going to last. We'll get back to you. Okay. No income, you know, just like I'm sure a lot of you guys couldn't go to work, no income. I knew I wasn't alone, but that doesn't make it any easier for anybody. And so I thought about it and I thought, well, what am I going to do? You know, maybe I'll read some stuff I haven't, you know, had a chance to, or watch some videos, you know, to learn how to light better or do something like that. Or I called up, I really did. I called up a lot of photographers I admired. I said, how do you do that? And I talked to them for a while and just see how they did things. But, you know, like after a few months, it wasn't probably even a few months. So probably in April or, you know, so I was getting kind of tired of that. And I walked up to the back porch one morning and I saw all these pretty birds on the back porch. And I had never photographed birds before, you know, like to speak of. I liked elk, or I liked a lot of things, but I never had time to do it. You know, I mean, I was always doing photojournalism, which was 7 days a week and really weird hours, and college photography, the same thing, you know, long days, 10, 12-hour football days, and never time to go out and just, you know, and do this. We have a place on the Torch River. My wife, it's her place, it's our place now. I had been going up there for 6 years, never photographed birds. Never. I'd sit on the deck and watch the boats and watch the birds and never even thought about it. Once in a while, I'd photograph a swan or something, but not seriously. I went out on the deck that morning. It was a beautiful spring morning, and I just saw these little birds, and they were colorful. And I thought, well, that'd be fun. You know, I haven't shot any pictures for a month. I'm going to get my football lens out there and sit out there. I wonder how close they'll come to me and see if I can get some shots. And I tried to hide the bird feeders here where they're clinging on to them, you know, and make creative pictures. But so I started to do that. And, you know, I still didn't think about it. But then I went up north. We'd go up north when the governor said we could go up north. We went up north, and, you know, we all had to isolate. And so I still didn't, you know, really have a purpose. But I shot this, and this was like the first one that I was kind of excited about. And I thought, oh, that was kind of neat, you know, the reflection and all that. And my wife said to me, I still remember, like, I still had no purpose. And she said, Steve, you know, like, every day is a gift from God. It's a, you know, you have to make the best of every single day. Do the best you can do at something, because it could be your last day. You never know. It should be, you know, do the best. This COVID thing's a gift of time. We don't know how long it's going to be. Do what you've always wanted to do. Don't look back. Do what you've always wanted to do, and just do it the best you can. I know you can do it. I'm like, wow, what like great advice. And I don't know what I always wanted to do. I just had no idea what I always wanted to do, you know. I cleared the woods out back and I thought about it. I sanded the deck, watched the birds coming, you know, but really didn't do anything. And I finally got an assignment in, must have been June, late June, for a retailer's magazine. And it was about how hard kayaks were to get during COVID. I thought, well, that's cool. So we had 2 kayaks up north. I'd never even been in them. You know, they were like the molded kind that you get all wet. And my buddy from CMU, I'll just never forget it. He'd always be like, they're a death trap. Don't get in them. You're going to flip over and die. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay, I better not take cameras in them. I'm not going to get in the kayak. And, but I got in a kayak after I shot pictures with people in the kayaks. And I thought, oh my God, how liberating is this? You know, I can go across, and I realized what I'd been looking at for like 6 years was the edge of a marsh. And back there was this little pond system and everything. And I thought, this is really something. You know, I have a biology degree too, by the way, a minor, but I always liked ponds and I liked that kind of stuff. Never had time for it. I used to have turtles and crayfish and all that in my aquarium in my room, you know, when I was a kid. But I never thought about taking pictures of them. And so I came back and I said to my wife, man, that was just so great in that kayak. I'm going to go get one. You know, I'm going to get one that I can take my cameras in. She said, well, it better be a good one because those are expensive. So make sure you get a decent kayak. And so I went to Bill and Paul's in town, and they had a beautiful open top kayak with holes in it that the water would drain. And so I took my cameras out for the first time. I bought a water bag and I locked them in it, really, you know, one of those dry bags, and took them across the marsh and got out there and parked. And I'd sit there and I'd like sit there long enough. And it's just, to me, exactly like community journalism. It's just like anything else I'd ever done. You sit there long enough and you see things move, you know. And as I sat there, I would like be saying to myself, man, if only something would fly right there, or if only, you know, look at how the light's changing during the day. And, you know, you'd see these pictures and if only something would be there, you know. And so then the ducks would fly through and I'd miss them and I couldn't believe it. Like they just fly through and I'd get these, like this was shot with a 100 to 400 laying on my back in a kayak sideways, and it's a tiny, tiny little damselfly, but it's with a Fuji 100 to 400 in a teleconverter actually, and it focuses so darn close. It's just amazing, you know, that combination. And I shot this, that's almost full frame, but those are dewdrops in the morning. So I would start doing these things, but I would miss the dang ducks, you know, and I thought, this is my purpose in life. This is my COVID challenge, is to get freeze these birds doing something, you know. I love all the pictures of birds. And I mean, Jan, I already told her I want like private lessons with Jan to figure out how she does these things. I can't get them sitting still. I can get them flying. I can't get them like actually sitting there like in you know, with those beautiful backgrounds. But I'm taking my journalism to the birds now. I'm like a community birder. I do what's around me. I don't chase the rose-billed spoonbills that are like 2 hours away, because when somebody saw one, I'm not running to get it personally. I am content doing what's in my backyard. This is my view from my cottage. So when things swim by, you know, I mean, when the light's right, I'm out there. You know, I do go places. This is Shiawassee Flats, but I'm still, you know, I'm just getting into it at this point. This was last, probably, I don't know, maybe, what is it, November? September?
September 20th.
Yep. So in September, I'm still kind of thinking about shooting birds. I haven't really shot them yet. And I'm just starting to go out. And this was my first week where I actually went out and tried to chase birds. It was in, you know what, October of last year. So I really hadn't shot birds till that point. And I'm out just driving circles. I use my car as a blind a lot. You know, you're driving down roads and stuff. There are birds, animals, whatever, are a lot more comfortable when they see a car oftentimes than if you open the car door and try to get out of the car. I learned that fast. But so I started, actually, you know, I went to Kensington. I thought, how do people get these pictures of these birds so close? I went to Kensington. The first thing I did down the trail, I had a woodpecker land on my shoulder. I thought, oh my God, like here I am, like in the wild, trying to chase them through the woods, and here they come to me. So I went to Kensington a few times. It's a beautiful place. If you want to practice some bird photography, I'm probably going to go there tomorrow or Friday, actually, just because I finally have a free day, and just go down. This was shot in Kensington, and, you know, the beautiful color and lakes, and there's trails, and the birds, a lot of the birds are, I mean, they're tempered to humans, you know, you'll see people feeding them out of their hands, but I do try to, you know, walk back a ways, but you know, it's just interesting and it's fun to see birds like that occasionally. And then in Thanksgiving, I went up to Torch and, you know, sat out there for a little bit in the swans in the snow. And so this was one of the, again, an early picture that I shot last year that I thought, okay, I'm kind of liking this, you know, this is fun, and you have to be ready when the birds appear. Swans, you know, again, are, they're there, they swim by, they fly, do different things. They're invasive species. A lot of people don't like them because they chase out the tundra swans that should be here, and they're nasty if you get too close to them. I found that out many times this year. And but they're very pretty birds, and they're big and they're active. And so I started shooting at that point, getting pretty serious about it and saying, okay, I really need to figure out how to do birds in action. And I think one of the things that I learned that's most important to me is I shoot. You have to shoot and you have to edit. And you have to say to yourself, Steve, like, why did you miss that? Why did that not work? What shutter speed did I use? What aperture? Why did I catch it not over here, but when it was over here? Oh, because I was on my phone. Oh, I was checking my email, or oh, I didn't have my camera turned on, or oh, I should have had the other lens on. And I try to, it sounds weird, but I talk to myself like that. I don't know if any of you guys do. I learned really early that nobody else was going to criticize what I did. They were always like, oh no, it's good, it's fine. You get a like on Facebook, whatever. Oh, everybody likes it. My grandma likes it. My mom likes it. I mean, seriously, like my kids like it. That's good enough. And I thought, no, I have to get, as a journalist, I had to get better. And the only way I was going to do that was to be a little bit hard on myself, not tear myself apart, but be constructive and criticize myself. So I would look at things and, and figure out why they didn't work and why they did work, equally why they did work, and cement that in my mind. And, this was a snowy owl. The sun just popped through the clouds and it was spotlit. It just like literally came through a little section of clouds. Really intense. It was December of last year. Muskegon, the wastewater treatment plant is a great place to go birding there. They'll give you a pass. You can drive around the lakes, and it's a pretty decent place, except when the snowies get there, then the crowds get there, and it's not a lot of fun, and people can get kind of rude, I think. But I never want to scare a bird. I never want to push it to fly. I'll wait 3 hours. I don't want to have it. That's still from my journalism background, I think. And plus, I think it's the kind thing to do. They're stressed. The reason they're here, they're stressed. They're not up north. They migrate down here for an easier winter. So I don't want to make their winter harder just so I can get a picture. But this, again, a flyby, long lens, shot it. Another snowy actually flew towards me because too many people kept chasing it, and it went backwards, and I stayed put, and it flew right at me and landed. That was shot with a 400, 1:400 zoom Fuji. But same thing. Get in close, get down low. I like the look at the little sane teeth or whatever they are on the bill. Serrated. There you go. I don't know anything about birds. Honest to God, I'm learning, as I go, but I'm fascinated by the whole thing and I'm trying to learn. But, visually, again, what makes a good picture? Get down low, get down to their level, just like you would a kid, or, if you can get head on. I love it when birds fly at me. Early morning, landfill, only person out there. I see this snowy owl, out on the ice. I stop, but I stop like 100 yards before the snowy owl because I know if I go down there, it's going to fly. So I stop, I get out, there's all the different ponds and everything. As I get out of my car, a peregrine falcon flew right next to me along the cement abutment. And I'm like, what the heck was that? And it just zooms like right eye level towards the snowy flies towards me, like lands maybe, I don't know, 100 feet away from me, but it's flying towards me. And I thought, this never has happened. Like, what in the world again? What is this? Why is this happening? All of a sudden I see the snowy puff up and I'm thinking, what in the world? Because I'm looking at the snowy and I see the falcon come into the frame. And so I shot a couple frames. The snowy's trying to look bigger than the falcon, puff up. The snowy then turns around and I get the falcon coming back at me, you know, straight at me. And it did it 2, 3 times, 4 times. I don't even know. I was just shaking. You know, it was like spot news. It was seriously like bullets were flying or whatever. It was just so out of the ordinary. And, but this was the first shot I got. This was one of the 4 pictures I entered into Audubon. Didn't do anything, by the way. So, but again, you know, I'm not only, I love wildlife, birds. I do use wide angle lenses occasionally. I think these are red poles. They come down here in the wintertime. They fly in flocks. You'll see them fly around just like this in the country from weed to weed to weed to weed. So I'm starting to get a little better. I've got a 200 to 600 zoom. I make a switch to Sony in December because I've had a lot of friends that I'm starting to talk birding with. And they're like, oh, focusing on the Sony. And I knew that the Sony, one of the guys used to be Nikon's professional, head of their professional, what's it called, Eric? NPS or? And like a professional service where you got your gear cleaned and they would help you out and loan you equipment. So he was at Sony now, so I wrote him. I did a lot of research, but I landed on a Sony A9 II and a 200 to 600 zoom, which I use exclusively from this point on for the most part. This was down at Kensington. The quality is, I still knew, I told Eric earlier, I need to know how to do luminosity masks and all that kind of stuff. I just don't know how to do it. But, you know, this was pre-dawn and it was like ISO 12,800. And I literally drove into the park. It's pitch dark. I see these 2 eagles up in the tree and I'm like, oh my God. And I parked my car and I ran full blast to the boardwalk. And the eagles, if anybody's ever been to Kensington, there's that little island out there by the nature center. And there's heron nests and, you know, eagle nests sometimes and stuff. But the 2 eagles were up there and it's not even light out. And I just like got down on my knees and propped the zoom on the little railing and I motor drived it. And they mated right then and there. And, you know, he got on and back and flapping the wings and screaming. And I'm like, still like, oh my God, you know, I've never seen anything like this. And he was on her back and then they got off and then they flew another direction and I still didn't really know kind of what I had. But I have a whole series of just this angry looking eagle up on top. And so that was kind of one of the more exciting first pictures I've taken. You know, I mean, I thought that was cool. I think I didn't enter this one yet, you know, in anything, but I've had a lot of people come after me about needing to do that mask right and enter it. This is a mute swan cropped. It was, you know, and again, I don't think there's anything wrong with cropping. You know, as a photographer, nobody told me that the frame, the 4x6 is sacred or anything like that. And I don't think it makes me a lesser photographer to crop. You know, I mean, there's only so much a lens can do, and there's only so much you can do spontaneously as you have a vision. You know, it's as you get in and editing, I'll crop something seriously 50 times sometimes before I get the crop that I really feel like is the best, maybe even 100. Journalism, it was that way. You know, you'd have one picture that would end up on the front page. You wanted it to have the most impact it could have. This was a horizontal picture with both wings, really tight. Sony called me up. They saw some of the other pictures and said, what kind of equipment are you using? And I said, well, you know, I got a Sony A9 II. And I said, I've got that zoom lens. And they're like, you're getting these pictures with that zoom lens? I said, yeah, you know, it's a gray lens. And I said, it could be nice to have the f4s and the 2.8s. And someday I will, maybe. But he goes, well, we got to get some better stuff in your hands. And so they sent me 2 suitcases full of stuff that I got to try out. So this is with the 600 f4 at that point, trying it out for the first time in what month? February. Oh my God. You know, it was like night and day. Most of the birds are moving again when it's really early, really late. The light's really low. It's cloudy. It's Michigan, cloudy all the time. You know, and so I fell in love with the lens at that point. I shot a few pictures. This is with the zoom though. goldeneye, you know. I started wearing camo too. If anybody does birding, you know, I never felt legit enough to wear camo. Like I didn't hunt. I didn't, you know, I thought, well, I'm not really, I'm kind of a poser. I don't want to like look like an outdoors guy, you know, or I'm not really. And, but I figured I kind of was at this point. And so the first day I put on camo, it was like unbelievable. The stuff just like flying in on me that before it flew around me. And so I have a little tree in front of our property right on the edge of the Torch River. It's pretty wild. There's a little pine tree. And now I will wear, you know, camo pants and camo shirt and a hoodie and stuff and sit there. And I get a lot of birds just coming in that don't pay any attention to me. This is a car find. I don't know how many of you guys do a lot of driving for jobs. You know, you travel, whatever. I have an old, it was a Domke bag, a long lens bag. It's, you know, it's square, it's about that long and canvas. And if I put my A92 and the 200 to 600, I can stick it right in that bag and leave it assembled. And I keep it oftentimes as I travel in between, you know, I have a Subaru Forester, I keep it right under the dog, whatever, hammock thing in the back. And I can grab it if I see something. But I shot this on, you know, just that way. I screeched to a halt when I saw him by the side of the road and, you know, started shooting from the car and it didn't fly on me. And, but it again, I couldn't have done that without, you know, getting out and waiting for it or trying to chase it. This was from my spot on with the zoom lens. It was a real surprise, the eagle. But so at this point, I'm starting to, you know, like feel, so this is what, like February. And somebody said to me, you know, you should follow like this guy. He had a picture in the Audubon Top 100. I said, well, is that good? You know, I've been on done a lot of contests and a lot of things. And they're like, yeah, man, if you can make the top 100 in Audubon, that's really something for birds. You know, I mean, this year there were 8,700 entries and 2,700 photographers or something. And they're like, yeah, you should follow this guy. And so I went to, I don't know if you guys, you know, I look at other people's work a little bit on Instagram or Facebook and see what they're doing. So I went and checked out the guy they told me to, and I thought, okay, you know, it's good. It's a nice picture. It's a bird sitting in the water, you know, really nice, like water level, but it's just sitting there. You know, I mean, it's okay. But I kind of thought the same thing at that point that I've always thought. It's kind of like, I like to be inspired by other people, but I don't want it to stifle my own growth and creativity and how I'm going to do things. And so, you know, I kind of never followed them again, you know, or didn't look at them or anything. I thought, well, pictures are pretty, you know, they're really nice. But, you know, it's like the same duck all the time or whatever. And I thought, I just need to figure out what my photography is going to be like. And I really do think, you know, at that point, I started really getting serious and saying, well, it's birds doing things, you know. And that's what I'm going to try to do. I love behavior. I love like people doing things as a journalist. That's what I always did. And so I would sit out, you know, hours and hours and hours on the edge of that river and in camo and in the cold and trying to figure out a system, you know, that I didn't get so cold and that I got better pictures and my batteries didn't die. And, you know, all the things that you need to figure out to continue to be ready to get good pictures. And I love it because you have to be like, to get them doing things, they fly. These are buffleheads. I don't know if you guys know what buffleheads are, but I've nicknamed them, they're like shooting bullets in the dark. It is so dark when they come out and they are so fast and they are so silent. It's like you just have to be like totally scanning back and forth and trying to catch any kind of movement. And then you have to lock on them and then you have to, you know, try to capture them and stop them with hardly any light and at F8 or F9 or whatever the zoom was, you know, it was pretty tough. But so I was really happy when I started getting buffleheads. This was my goal, you know, was to get these pictures. And in the meantime, I'm just getting tons of like personal messages. I would post them to Facebook the last however many months, and everybody was isolated. We're all isolated. I'm isolating up there. I'm fortunate that, again, we were able to. The governor wasn't fining us for being somewhere. And, I could go up north, and if I didn't, which I didn't have work or I didn't have to be home, I could go up and stay for a little stretch and start to try to really get serious about photography. But I would post them and I'd get these messages from people. Thank you. You made my day. And I can't believe, it's just like a breath of fresh air every day when you post these, and I can't go anywhere. And, I just really appreciate it. And then I started getting photographers emailing me, and it's like, man, Jessmore, you're killing it. And you're inspiring me. I haven't done anything for COVID, and look what you're doing. And I'm thinking, wow, this is like, again, sense of community to me. I'm telling these great stories and people are kind of feeling better about a place, and you're feeling better about your life because I'm just publishing these pictures of birds. And I thought, this is enough reward. This is really cool. Never had any thought about like anything else except for getting better. And still about this time, people are saying, you got to enter this Audubon contest. You need to enter. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what is this Audubon contest? And I Google it, it's like the photo contest for birds. Like, okay. Thinking, I read the rules. Well, you got to enter. You're a professional. You have to enter as a professional wildlife photographer. I'm like, okay, I've been doing this for 6 months. I've got, I do it in my backyard. I really don't have a lot of experience. And so the first month, the entries were free. You could enter for free as many as you wanted, and I didn't enter. And so then I just had a couple other editor friends that were in photojournalism at places say to me, you better enter this contest. So I thought, okay, I'm going to pay. It's $15 an image. I'm going to do as many images as I can one morning and I'm going to enter. And so I was able to enter 4 pictures that morning, fill out all the forms. And, I just entered 4 pictures and kind of forgot about it. And this is a barn swallow. They are so dang fast and erratic. And that was again, another purpose. I sat out there with a 400mm lens and shot them. But so I entered 4 pictures and didn't, like I said, think about it. And I got a email about a month later and said, hey, you got 2 pictures that made it to the semifinals of the Audubon contest. I'm like, whoa, okay. That's great. That's, wow, okay. I don't know what that means. Semifinals, that could be 1,000 pictures, who knows? That just means you made the first cut, I thought. And so, I just kept still going out and photographing. Work started picking up again. Finally, vaccines were out. And people were going back to work. Schools were starting to go more in person. I started, having more work and less time to spend on wildlife because this was just my fun. This was my COVID thing. This was my challenge for my wife to do something that and get better at it. And so it was still a passion, though. I would sit under that tree and, I don't know how you guys do your organization in the computer, and I'm not very efficient at it, but I just do folders and I tag them kind of like up there with the date and all the folders inside each date, And I think I had 2 8-terabyte hard drives filled up with folders from the past year. They're just lined up. Every folder is probably 5 hours of work, and you think about all the effort and all the time and all the commitment to get better and to force yourself to get better. And to me, it was, thank God for Brenda, I mean, my ex, I never shot a bird picture in 30 years, Here I have this wonderful lady and she's just inspiring me to do this stuff. And telling me to and saying, hey, I got stuff I can do. You don't have to worry about me. Go do something and do it the right way and we'll meet up for dinner. Like, okay. So I'm doing that and I'm looking at all that time that I spend, and I got my kayak and I'm taking my lenses in the kayak. That's how I'm getting I'm getting closer. I'm in camo. I'm getting braver, I'll be really honest. I dumped one camera in the water. It was an old wide angle, Fuji, whatever. It fell in the water. I learned my lesson really quick. Never again, I hope. And, but I'm getting really good at paddling and, with lenses and paddling. And so this is a little more recent work, but about, it must have been May, I got a call from Audubon and, hey, can you fatten up that caption for these pictures you enter? Can you be available for a phone call on Friday? We're going to interview you. And, I got like four things I had to do for Audubon. And, it was like, I said to Brenda, I said, my gosh, I have to have won something. I have to have something in the top 100 or whatever, And so then I got another call and it's like, Steve, can you be available for the Audubon photo editor on Monday to talk to? And I'm like, yeah, cool. And, but I still really didn't know why. I didn't know what what it was, I just doing my thing and, and so the photo editor calls me up and I'm not to the pictures that won yet, but she called me up and said, hey, you won first place in the professional division of Audubon. I'm like, really? She's like, yep. She goes, how do you feel? I said, well, I'm just glad I'm sitting down. I mean, we talked for a while and she said, I've seen like so many cardinal pictures in my life. I can't tell you how many cardinal pictures I've seen. And this is by far the best cardinal picture I've ever seen in my life. I said, well, thanks. I shot that out of my car window. And again, we're going to get there soon. I'm going on way too long. And so we talked for a while longer and she said, by the way, your hawk and chipmunk got honorable mention. I said, oh, that's nice. She's like, what? Aren't you impressed? I said, well, it's honorable mention. I won first place, the other one. And I didn't really think about it, and she goes, well, it's embargoed. You got to stay quiet for 6 more weeks. You can't tell anybody. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. And so I told my kids right away and I told my wife right away. I just swore, they made them swear that they wouldn't tell anybody else. And, but I won. And I went and I looked at the day before it was going to be announced. I went to the website and last year's were on there. And I realized they only give out a first and an honorable mention. So they don't give out seconds and thirds and fourths and multiple honorable mentions. They give out a first and maybe an honorable mention. And I was like the first person to ever sweep the category for professional photographers. And that 6 weeks I laid in bed and I thought, how in the world did my 2 pictures like win the Audubon contest? I mean, I've only been doing this for like, when I entered, I'd only been doing it for 6 months. And, it was like, it's still, I go back to the whole photojournalism and work ethic thing. I think that's all I can go back to, and trying to be creative and trying to be diligent to learn and grow and improve and just get better at something. This, I'm going to show you 5 or 6 pictures here. This is my last 2 weeks. These are pictures I've shot the last couple of weeks. This is like, again, Eric knows this. As a journalist, I told you earlier, you got to go to every assignment. You have to make pictures. You cannot come back and say, oh, the light wasn't right, or they didn't really do something, or whatever. You need to just crunch it and just say, okay, I'm not wasting my time out here today. I am going to watch every little movement and everything and every normal Canada goose and every mallard duck and every kingfisher and and, you know, whatever it is, and figure out how I can get closer or how I can get a better picture, you know, like be alert and keep my phone in my pocket and all that kind of stuff. But this was just my last, this was Sunday. I shot this Sunday morning. And, you know, I'm just having a blast doing this stuff and being creative and finally seeing like, it's like being revealed out of me that I can do this kind of stuff, that I learned something so bad for so many people, COVID, you know, turned into this blessing for me. Just like, I can't even tell you, like, you know, what it meant. You know, again, I thought I had my reward. All the people were telling me I inspired them and that they liked my Facebook pictures and all that stuff. But, you know, I mean, this was, now it won't go. Sorry about that. What's going on? So this was the beginning of my hunt for the red-tailed hawk. And this is the honorable mention picture you're going to see in the end. But this was the first day I used the Sony camera and the 200-600 lens. The first trip that I took it out. And, you know, to me, it's a tool. Just like my Nikon lenses or Canon, and I get it set up. But it's just a tool, and I didn't know how to use that tool, and I missed it flying at me, flew at my head twice, and I missed it both times. That was how we saw him. But I waited and I waited and I learned on the spot. And I sat there for, honestly, I followed it for over 2.5 hours, this hawk from a distance, and just watched it. And the guy I was with, he did one circle around it. And he's like, come on, let's go find something else. I'm like, no, you know, like there's a hawk right here. And he's like, yeah, but I photograph hawks all the time. I got all the pictures I need. I walked around it. I got every angle. I said, I'll see you later. You know, I'm going to stay and watch and get it doing something. And I've never seen it fanning its tail before. And, you know, I mean, it took off and I finally got one that was sort of in focus. I was so excited, you know, but it flew off and I thought I was done for the day. And it flew down, you know, out of sight along a trail. This was at Kensington, way in the back. And it flew, and another guy was with me at that point, and he's like, well, I said, let's just walk down there, see if we can find it. And so we get down there, and it's on the ground, and it's jumping up and down and spewing the leaves. Evidently, what he had gone after, she had gone after, she missed, and she'd jump up and down, spew the leaves, look. She did that 5, 6, 8 times, I don't know. And then some people were coming down the trail. And again, I'm quite a ways away. I'm here to the fan up there or something. She's on the ground. I'm quite a ways away, you know. And she flew straight up into a tree. So I watched her. But she sat there and she, I don't know why that's not full screen. But she sat and she watched that spot. She must have watched it another 20 minutes or so. And all of a sudden you heard a squeal. The chipmunk ran out and the hawk fell down, and from the back, I didn't get anything. It fell down on top of it, turned around, literally flew at me with a chipmunk hanging in the claws right at my face. I had to duck, and it went up and it landed on a tree that was suspended, almost like the light right there, but it was a little bit higher, but it was suspended horizontally across the canopy. And with the chipmunk. And this was the picture that I ended up, this was the honorable mention for the professional division of Audubon. You know, a lot of people don't like it. Probably my favorite picture I've ever shot. It's just circle of life. It's what every bird is doing out there. They're all circling. They're all looking for seeds for, you know, to survive. They don't have the same opportunities we have. But I didn't think it was gruesome, you know, personally. You should see the frames after this. I just kept shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting. You know, I had never been in a spot like this before. And again, new lens, new everything, 3200 ISO, just so you know, it was almost dark out. It was a winter afternoon, probably about 2 o'clock. You know, I mean, I don't remember my ISO and all that right now, but or the shutter speed. But you know, I mean, anyway, as I did the edit for the 2.5 hours of shots I did, I got to this frame and stopped. I just said, this is, how can it get any better than that? Like, it's not being torn apart really or anything at that point. You don't know if it's alive or not. The pleating, everything. But anyway, this was the picture that won honorable mention. This is the picture that won first place. Went to Muskegon again. Went out driving in the country. The roads were blocked with snow. Couldn't get through. I was looking for hawks and eagles. I was still a real newbie birder. I still am, but I was a really newbie birder. I'm like, I saw one hawk as I turned down a country road. It was a country road because I couldn't get in near the ponds. I was just cruising. We used to cruise for features as journalists, looking for people doing things. While I was looking for birds doing things. I saw this hawk and it flew away, and I tried to shoot it, and I got its tail end. I was like really upset, and not seeing any hawks and eagles. I turned out the side window of my car and I see this red dot in the ditch, like probably the same thing, probably here to the fan, maybe a little further. I had the 200 to 600 zoom. I shut my car off. I learned in the wintertime, I learned this really fast. You cannot have your heater going. You cannot have your car going with Sony equipment, at least, because you get the heat waves coming out of the car and it distorts things. And so I turned it all off, opened all my windows, opened my sunroof, let all the air come in. It must have been 10 degrees below zero. It was freezing. And I saw this cardinal, and it was bopping from the tops of weeds and feeding on the seeds. And it would go from weed to weed, eat some seeds. And I watched it, being a quick study. You have to kind of be a quick study. When you see these things, you only have so much opportunity. But I realized, I said, okay, there's a weed here. There's a weed to the left. I was perpendicular to it. I said, he's going to fly off that weed to the other weed, which he did. This was the first frame I shot as he hopped off this weed. The next frame, he was out of the frame. And I proceeded to follow it some more. You got one almost kind of similar, but not really. It was a little less perpendicular to me. Got home, was upset with myself. I didn't have any hawks and eagles. Didn't edit this out. And I went back about 2 days later and I said, I guess that's kind of cool. And it's so hard to edit your equipment. That's what this club is so cool, to have something like this for all you guys to look and get constructive criticism. I didn't have anybody. I was looking at the pictures and I thought, well, okay, I like it. How do I crop it? Do I leave it like this or do I do it like this? I ended up landing like this. This is how I entered it. This is how it won. The two pictures ended up fighting each other for first place. And it doesn't surprise me that the other one didn't win because it's Audubon. And the more I learned about Audubon, as I posted it online, the comments were about 50-50, like, I'm unfollowing you now for the chipmunk. I can't believe you'd post this. And, versus this one, we're all just, so positive. But so this was, again, shot out of car window, Sony A9 II, 200 to 600 zoom. And I will tell you something I keep learning. I think this is the biggest thing that I try to do. I will go for shutter speed over ISO any day of the week. I am, this was a 5,000 for the second wide open with the zoom lens. And this was the first picture that I shot that high with. I never really thought you'd have to shoot that high, but it's amazing the movement you get with birds. And they're so fast, and certain birds are tremendously fast. The wings, to capture that. And as you saw a lot of my other things, I try to get the 3 tips down, touching, skimming. This one has ice crystals. If you look really close, it's skimming the snow. Actually, there's 3 feathers down. I mean, chin feathers, catch light in the eye, the head, the feathers going back from the wind on his head. And if you look close, there's actually red coming through the wing, the light coming through the wing and reflecting on the snow too. All those things, little nuances I never saw like originally. But So anyway, that's the one that kind of changed my life at this point. So it has made me a much, again, I'm just grateful that it happened, but you know I put in the work it was luck, 3 other judges, 4 other judges, it may not even have placed, you know. I entered this in the Michigan Audubon, it took 3rd place in 1 category. It won 1st in the nation, you know, in that category. You never know, you can't place so much weight on contests. But when it does work for your, you know, favor, it's really a wonderful thing. So this has, again, given me a lot of hope. I'm in the process of trying to do a book, kind of with the COVID story, with these bird pictures, the COVID experience. I have a publisher in New York City. He's reached out to me. He wants to do this. I think he'll help me at least get it to a certain level. I hope that's what I hope to do next. So trying to do this, do more wildlife photography, and hopefully my freelance, I'm 61. If I retire by 65, I guess I'm hoping, I don't think I'll ever retire, but I do hope, I see my work already going more this way, then I'm hoping I can kind of cut back on some of the college work. It's really strenuous. You know, I've already, football, I gave up on this year to CMU. I told them I wouldn't shoot anymore. I figure I'd rather have 3 more fall weekends than, and I'm getting my timing and everything with the birds, so I don't need football anymore to do that. So I'm kind of hoping this is the direction I go though in the future. So I would just say to all you guys, you know, it's just putting in a lot of it's putting in the time. You know, again, it wasn't, I'll be honest at this point, after I won the Audubon, I got some cash money from Audubon. I ended up buying a used 400 2.8 and I bought a brand new 600 f4. I'm a professional. I'm doing this for a living. I'm making money every day. I can use it for my college work. But the most important thing we all have is time. And if I'm out there doing this stuff and trying to be serious about it, you know, I did it with the other lenses. I feel really good, but it makes a lot of difference to have an f4 or 2.8. And I'm taking them in the kayak, which is kind of scary. But I don't take the 600, but I do take the 400. That 2.8 from a kayak is really wonderful. So I would just say, think about your time, you know, how much time. Again, we're all limited, make the best out of it. And that's all I got. So. I think I went really long and I'm sorry. It was hard to gauge.
All right, you ready for the lights?
Anytime.
Anybody have questions? So you don't usually use a tripod, is that